mother, Bas Benjamin David Beryl of blessed memory. DJ Acquisitions, Yisachar Zvulun sponsorship for the Frua Shalema of Menachem Mendel Ben Sarabatia and Devorah Fega Bat Razel. Okay, so let's begin with an interesting little piece of trivia. The phrase perception is reality has been attributed to political strategist Harvey Leroy, known as Lee Atwater, and has well become the standard perception of reality, pun intended. There's a far deeper experience of reality, which lay at the heart of why perception is reality. Feelings are the deepest experience of human reality, which lay at the heart of why perception is reality. So much so that people react the strongest to feelings. Nothing truly impactful in our lives are ever done other than in reaction to a feeling. Feelings, however, when left on their own devices, become extremely chaotic. And when this happens, our lives become extremely chaotic with that, because feelings is the deepest reality of life. Thus, far too often, our feelings are something we can't live with them, nor can we live without them. In this lecture, we are going to explore a teaching of the Rebbe delivered in 1966, defining the reports of the 10 spies who declared that the Jewish people would not be able to conquer Israel, versus the 2 spies, that of Caleb and Yehoshua, Joshua, who said, and I quote to you, "We will inherit," i.e. conquer them. Mystically speaking, the powerful nations of Canaan, that's what the land was called before it became Israel, the land of Canaan. So the powerful nations of Canaan represent powerful emotions, and the Jewish people represent mind over heart. Thus, the 10 spies were saying that the power of these overwhelming emotions are too much for the linear mind to dominate. Caleb responds that these emotions as well, even these powerful emotions, can be dominated and redirected. Caleb was right. And through understanding and through his directions that he gave, we will learn how to first subdue and then redirect our powerful emotions towards productivity. Okay. So, like last week, we're going to start with giving a list of the introductions that we need to understand before we can truly understand Caleb's response of how to conquer the powerful emotions of the land of Canaan and how to redirect them and become a very fruitful and productive startup nation called Israel. So, here is the list of introductions that we're going to need to first explore and understand. Number 1, the worlds of Tohu and Tikkun, and the shattering of Tohu, which then fell into Tikkun. That's introduction number 1. Introduction number 2, we are going to have to discuss the origin of emotions. What are emotions? Where did they come from? Number 3, we're going to discuss the 3 different stages of development of human emotions. In the teaching of Kabbalah and Hasidus, there are specifically 3 stages of development. They're called pregnancy, nursing, and intellect. We will discuss those 3 stages of how it develops. And the last introduction that we're going to give is to understand the difference between Elijah and Moses. There's a very interesting Kabbalistic difference between the 2. Okay? So, just to catch you up, we're talking about the story of the spies and the 10 spies who spoke against the land of Israel, the 2 spies who spoke pro-Israel, Caleb's response to the 10 spies, because according to Kabbalah, the 10 spies were saying that the mighty emotions, i.e. the nations of Canaan, cannot be conquered by the mind, i.e. the Jewish people. Caleb is saying, yes, even these chaotic, overwhelmingly powerful emotions can be dominated and can be redirected. So we're going to really decipher every word of what Kalev said and learn how to deal with emotions. Okay?
I mean evil emotions.
I'm sorry?
Evil emotions?
No, not evil emotions, passionate emotions. Okay. Egocentric, passionate emotions. Okay? Okay, so let's jump into the first introduction, which is the world of Tohu and Tikkun. So there's an interesting teaching. Our sages tell us in Kohelet Rabbah, tells us that before God created the world as we know it, he was creating worlds and he was destroying them. The Arizal, the great Rabbi Gloria, he defines this creating worlds and destroying them to be the world of Tohu, before he then created the world of Tikkun. Now what we need to understand is that God does not work on trial and error. Oops, let's tweak it, let's send out the patch. So obviously, what we need to understand is that it was extremely important to have the world of Tohu created, to have the world of Tohu destroyed, with the sparks of Tohu falling into the world of Tikkun, in order for Tikkun to be the perfect world in which to fulfill God's desire and purpose of creating the universe in the first place. Okay? So let's just understand that this wasn't a mistake. The Medrash is not trying to elude that, oops, God didn't get it right the first couple of times until he finally got it right. But rather, this was all important stages in the process that would lead us into the world as it is today, which is the perfect world in which we can fulfill the purpose of creation.
How many times did he do that?
In Tohu, as far as the Arizal is talking about, it's the one experience of the world of Tohu. That's all it is. Okay? Okay. With understanding this, let's understand the definition of the word Tohu means chaos. The definition of the word Tikkun means orderliness. If over here we're going to say orderliness. Okay? Now, what is the definition of chaos in the world of Kabbalah? Chaotic. What is chaotic? In the world of Kabbalah, the definition of the word chaos is when there is not a proper balance between the vessels and the light. When you have too powerful of a light and too thin and weak of a vessel, you're dealing with a very great imbalance, which is causing very great inner disturbance. That is exactly what happened in the world of Tohu. So when we call Tohu the world of chaos, we're talking about a total imbalance between the light of Tohu and the 10 vessels of Tohu, which led to the shattering. So let's discuss this for a moment. Why was there an imbalance? God creates things perfectly. So why the imbalance? To understand the imbalance, we need to understand, what does it mean that Tohu had a powerful light? What does it mean, powerful light? So, the first thing we need to know is, as a pre-understanding, is that in the world of Kabbalah we're taught that the vessels are connected to its light. They react appropriately to their light. Okay? Now, the light of Tohu, because of its ultimate connection to its source, the infinite light, therefore, Tohu became the illumination of the essence of the ray of the infinite light. Let's explain this. Everything here is going to sound Kabbalistic, but you've experienced this class before. We walk away with things practical. What we're talking about is that in the ray of the infinite light, which according to Kabbalah and even science exists in every single ray of light, there's two dimensions. There's the essence of the ray, and there's the expression of the ray. Tohu's ultimate connection, its total humbleness and transparency to its source, which is the infinite light, had it actually being the illumination of the essence of the ray of the infinite light. That's what we mean when we say powerful. The essence of the ray of the infinite light. Now, what happened? The vessels of Tohu were reacting in kind to the light of Tohu. And just like the vessel, just like the light of Tohu was completely transparent and connected to its source, so too the vessels of Tohu were completely dedicated, transparent, and committed to the light of Tohu. And therefore, instead of the vessels stabilizing the light, which is what vessels are supposed to do, instead of the vessels stabilizing the light, they became completely transparent to the light. Which means that the vessels were very thin, 100% transparent, and therefore they became very fragile to the point where they were not able to sustain the essence of the ray of the infinite light. So actually, it isn't that a negative experience, rather it was precisely because of its total selflessness, where it wasn't thinking about its own sustainability, but rather to become nothing more than a conduit to the ultimate possibility of the ray of the infinite light. Therefore, the light of Tohu was now allowing the illumination of the essence of the ray of the infinite light to shine through it. The vessels were acting in kind, that they, instead of stabilizing and concealing, they too were reacting in the same mindset of the light of Tohu, which means that they just wanted to be an absolute conduit and transparency of the light of Tohu. So in turn, what actually happened was that the vessels of Tohu were trying to allow the essence of the ray of the infinite light to shine through it.
And
that was impossible.
they shattered.
Thus, therefore, they ended up being completely thin to allow total transparency. The thinness and the, i.e. weakness of that those vessels, therefore were unsustainable to the Tohu powerful essence light, and therefore they shattered. Now, what happened when they shattered? What happens is, because there's such a bonding between the vessel of Tohu and the lights of Tohu, when the pieces shattered and fell into the world of Tikkun, the light of Tohu, which was attached to that piece, actually fell into the world of Tikkun. Now, we're going to discuss the power of this. However, I do want you to understand that these pieces of the vessels of Tohu, which had connected to them the unbelievable, powerful essence light of Tohu, which was reflecting the essence light of the infinite light, when they fall into this world, they manifest themselves in a very powerful form of temptation, which when we are seduced into that realm, we're entered into the world of the chaos. Life becomes chaotic. Just like the vessels became chaotic and shattered. We'll discuss that soon.
The world of Tikkun is our world. Huh?
Yes. Now, let's talk about the world of Tikkun. The world of Tikkun, defined as orderliness, is what it is precisely because the lights of Tikkun were only illuminating the expression of the ray of the infinite light. Now, allow me to explain this for a moment. What is the difference you hear in Hasidus and Kabbalah, essence, expression? What's going on here? So let's focus for a moment. The expression of light, by definition, its focus and goal is on the recipient to be able to digest it in a sustainable way. Expression, by definition, needs to be received. Thus, the expression of light is always focusing on the appropriate capacity of the recipient so that it can be absorbed in a fashionable or orderly and sustainable way. The definition of essence of light is not at all focused on the recipient. All the essence of a ray of light wants to do is to be the absolute true representation of its source, to the point of its own self-detriment. It's not interested in being received sustainably by a recipient. Its focus is, am I truly serving my purpose of illumination which truly befits and defines the source of light? Therefore, by definition, expression of light is chaotic for the recipient because it isn't measured appropriately for the recipient's capacity.
That's man and the neshama.
We'll talk about exactly what those two, very good. We'll talk about exactly what those two represent in our individual life in a moment. However, what I'm trying to share right now is that now we understand why specifically the essence light, which was illuminating through the light of Tohu, created chaos in its vessels to the point where they shattered. While the expression of the ray of the infinite light that was being illuminated through the lights of Tohu worked perfectly because it allowed for a thicker vessel which was able to sustain. Now, for a moment, let's just digress for a moment so we can put things in perspective. Now you understand why it was so important to have Tohu and Tohu shatter and fall into Tikkun in order for Tikkun to be the true fulfillment of God's desire. And what is that? The ultimate fulfillment of God's desire is to have the essence light of Tohu housed in the sturdy, stabilized vessels of Tikkun. That is the true purpose of creation. That this world become an abode to the essence, not to just expression, which was cut down to size. When we want this world to be the home of God, we're talking about to the essence of His infinite light. Not some watered down expression of His infinite light. So therefore, because there was Tohu, Tohu shattered, fell into Tikkun. Now in the world of Tikkun, because of Tikkun's evolution, the vessels are thick and sturdy with the power of stabilization. Therefore, when you have the lights of Tohu in the vessels of Tikkun, you're talking about the true fulfillment of God's desire in creating a universe in the first place. Okay? But as I said, I mentioned to you that we're dealing with a very sticky situation, because the minute you start touching the lights of Tikkun, which is essence expression, you're dealing with a chaotic experience which can turn into this unbelievable point of temptation. Not in my notes, but just forgive me for this point of reference. Why did the Darth Vader become the Darth Vader? The Darth Vader, for those of you who live in Star Wars.
Star Wars.
It's because he succumbed to the temptation of a stronger type of light. There is no dark side. The dark side is coming from a source of essence which is beyond sustainable expression. That's what happens when you start dabbling with the unbelievable passionate powers of the light of Tohu, not being very careful to stay in sync with the capacities of the vessels of Tikkun. We're going to talk about that. Okay? But now you're starting to understand a little bit of what's going on here. But before we really bring this about, how this has to work with the land of Canaan, the 10 spies, the 2 spies, what is Caleb's answer to their appropriate, they gave an appropriate, opinion. So what did Caleb do with it? We'll talk about it in a minute. However, I want to go to what you mentioned, Rebbe, that we need to talk about this in individuality. To talk about some, extraterrestrial Tohu and Tikkun really doesn't help us live our lives. But now that we know that man is the reflection of the entire universe, so if there's a Tohu and Tikkun up there, there's a Tohu and Tikkun in here. So let's talk about the human experience of Tohu and Tikkun. Do you know the first time we have a human manifestation of Tohu and Tikkun? It's taught in Kabbalah that the first manifestation of a human Tohu and Tikkun is in Genesis, the most famous set of twins that was born, Esau and Jacob. What does the verse say right there, right after it introduces their birth? It says, and Jacob liked Esau, while Rebekah liked Jacob. Why would Isaac like Esau? The answer is because Isaac lived in the he lived in the realm of spirituality. When he looked at Esau, he saw the infinite powers of the light of Tohu. While Rebekah, who lived her life in the reality of the physical manifestation of spirituality, she clearly saw how devastating Esau is if he is not subdued and directed by Jacob. Because Esau is Tohu and Jacob is Tikkun. Let's talk about it on a more individual level. Within every human being, Tohu, passion, is the manifestation of the animalistic soul. Opposite. The animalistic soul is the manifestation of the power of Tohu, while the godly soul is the manifestation of the power of Tikkun. Let's be real. The animalistic soul, he's not bad. He's just, by definition, chaotic in his desires. While the godly soul is cool, calm, and collected. Let's take it one more level so that we can really talk about our lecture tonight. The animalistic soul is represented in large by emotions. The godly soul is represented by large in intellect. Thus the Alter Rebbe in Tanya, when he sets up the small city with its two kings, he says the godly soul king rests in the mind, while the animalistic soul king rests in the left side of the heart. The core blood, not oxygenated blood, the core heat of blood. Okay? Now we understand what it means that emotions make a fool out of us. They have this very cute meme, a picture of the brain telling the heart, please don't make a fool out of me. And let's talk about it in a realistic way. How many times have each of us individually, personally, actually experienced that our emotions made a fool out of us?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
You have no idea.
Yeah, right? Every second, only every second.
Okay. Okay. So now we're getting to understand. Tohu is what we mean when we talk about chaotic, overwhelming emotions, while Tikkun is the orderliness of mind over heart. Okay? Okay. The next introduction we need to understand is the origin of emotions. What is the origin of emotions? So, by the human being, the Alter Rebbe in chapter 3 of Tanya, he lines up for us, and it's quoted in many places, even before the Alter Rebbe, in the Kabbalah. We talk about the intellects being the parents and the emotions being the offspring. It gets so detailed and defined that we talk about wisdom being the male parent, understanding being the female parent, that being the consummation of the father and the mother, from which the offspring is born. Simply spoken, a healthy emotion, its origin is study, concentration, meditation, and thus you have a feeling. I.e., when I study, concentrate, and meditate on the kindness and the greatness of God, I'm going to give birth to a love for God due to his kindness and an awe of God due to his totally omnipotent greatness. However, this is so practical and real that the Alter Rebbe tells us that if the wisdom is not properly done, if the understanding is not properly done, if the personalization of the consummation of knowledge is not properly done, you should know that what you're dealing with, quote unquote, false fancies, dimyonot shav. Now I want to share with you what this means. You know, there is this scientific study, it's a case, where a woman who's not mentally stable so convinces herself that she's pregnant that literally her stomach starts growing. However, there is no child in there. That's what happens when we don't really work wisdom, understanding, and knowledge. The flash of light, it's total dissecting and the personalization. Wisdom, understanding, knowledge. That's the only, correct. That's the only way, according to Tanya, to actually have a human emotion. Fatuity and all that other type of stuff, that's not real emotions. Those are false fancies. You know, when you talk about this scientific notion of a woman convincing herself that she has, she's pregnant, in Yiddish, it's one of the most famous sayings. Red sich nicht ein, kein Kind im Bauch. Don't talk yourself into a child in your stomach. That's literally the Yiddish saying. Another phrase is, leg nicht kan fegelach im bosom.
Yeah.
Don't put no fluttering feelings of like wings of a bird, flapping in your heart. Oh, I'm feeling. What are you feeling? Practically speaking, I just want to say this and move on. When someone tells me they love God, I tell me, can you tell me about God? When they don't answer, I must conclude that their love is false. How can you love what you don't know? Okay, let's move on. Now, according to these teachings, the origin of emotions and their sustainability depends upon intellect. However, there's a different teaching. There's a different teaching that tells us that the truest inner dimension of every emotion is the power of will. I want, I don't want. I want is the drive of love and all its many offspring emotions. What I don't want is the birth of fear and all its many offspring emotions. Which means that Ratzon, the power of will, is the origin of emotions. Now, if the power of will is the origin of emotions, let's talk about this. In the Kabbalistic and Hasidic setup of the human psyche, you have the top three intellects, right, left, center. Under that, you have the chest, the three primary emotions, right, left, and center, love, awe, and compassion. And under them, you have the next three, or I wouldn't say, not primary, what was secondary emotions, which is endurance, acceptance, and commitment. And then there's the last emotion, which is already expression, malchut. Now, intellect, I told you, is above emotions. However, the power of will in the world of Kabbalah is the circular, infinite crown which lies above the head. Thus, we're now understanding that there's two dimensions of emotions. There is the human tikkun emotions, which is the process of the intellect giving birth and sustaining the emotions. But then there is the toe experience of emotions, where the emotions are not connected or responding to intellect, rather directly to the overwhelming, chaotic I want. Right? Now we understand what the 10 spies were saying, and they were right. The land of Canaan pre the entrance of the Jewish people and transforming it into Israel, was the chaotic tohu power of emotions. The Jewish people, they were mandated to be human, in which the intellect is in control of the emotions. That's what the tikkun nefesh is all about. The correction of the soul is all about that, to create that healthy balance of tikkun. Now, my friends, have you ever tried to reason with a child that is in a full-blown tantrum of, I want what I want and I want it now? You can't reason intellectually with that child. That's exactly what the 10 spies were saying. We cannot conquer, redirect these emotions. These emotions are not emotions we're used to. These are tohu emotions, directly connected to the infinite power of will, the all-encompassing circular power of will. And therefore they said, let's not go there. Let's stay in the desert where we keep our human experience. Balance between vessels and light. Balance between emotions and intellects. This is what they were saying. However, we'll talk about it more later, but what was Kalev's answer in a nutshell? Kalev's answer is that there is a way to deal with a child. How do we deal with a child? Long before we introduce the rational form of education, we first put in place the obedience form of education. And that's what it means when it says, and Kalev silenced the nation. We'll talk about that more later. But now you're starting to see how everything is falling into place. Chaotic feelings, the land of Canaan, the 10 spies experiencing a total fear of even messing with it because we're going to succumb to chaotic lives. And Kalev saying, no, there's a way to deal with this. Okay? Let's go further. The next thing, introduction, we need to understand before we understand exactly what Kalev is saying and the directions he's giving us of how to conquer our inner child experience of tohu emotions with our adult self, we need to first understand the difference between Moses and Elijah. Now, why am I taking you to understand Moses and Elijah? So let me give you a little bit of Kabbalistic Hasidic insights. The verse does not say, and Kalev silenced the nation. Rather, it says, Vayas Kalev esa'om el Moshe. And Kalev silenced the people to Moses. Why to Moses? Kalev was about to say. Kalev was going to talk. He should have just said. And Kalev silenced the people, and he said, bah, 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 bah. What's those extra two words? To Moshe. Number one. Number two, our sages tell us in Kabbalah and Hasidus, if you add up the numerical value of the Hebrew name Kalev, Kaf Lamed Vet, you have 52. If you add up the numerical value of the name Eliyahu, the Hebrew letters of Eliyahu, you have the number 52. Thus, Kalev was at that moment being a conduit to the 52 of Elijah. Therefore, when the verse says, Vayas Kalev el ha'esa'om el Moshe, and Kalev silenced the people to Moses, we actually have to understand that in a certain level, it was Elijah connecting the people to Moses. Thus, we need to understand if Elijah / Kalev is that Kabbalistic number of 52, who's Moses? So if you look in Exodus, when the Jewish people complained against Moses, he said, V'nachnu ma. We are but ma. Ma means what? Now, if you add up the word ma, it's 45. So if Elijah / Kalev is 52, Moses is 45. And somehow the number 52 is what can connect the frightened people of the overwhelming chaos emotions to the power of orderliness of Moses. 52 brings tohu emotions to 45 Moses. Okay? Mystical enough for today? So what's these numbers, 52, 45? So let me briefly take you quickly through the power of these numbers. You know them, huh?
I have a question.
Okay. I usually don't allow asking questions, but being that your name is Michael Ben Mella, how do I not allow you to ask a question?
I just want to know why those psukim were used for 52 and 45. Why did you use those specific ones?
The V'nachnu ma.
Yeah.
The V'nachnu ma is Moses saying who he is. And we are but ma. What better way to know what Moses is if he himself just told you, we are but ma.
And what did Kalev say?
Kalev just said, the verse just says, Vayas Kalev es ha'am el Moshe. And Kalev silenced the people to Moses. Now that we know that Kalev equals 52, and we know that Moses is all about 45, you can mystically read that verse as, and 52, silence, i.e., connected, brought about obedience from the people, i.e., the experience of chaotic emotions, fear, to Moses, the epitome of orderliness. And now let's go ahead and understand this. So, quickly, really Kabbalah 101. The name of God, 4 letters, the ineffable tetragrammaton, Yud K Vav K equals, it's actually Hey. It's just, I am so used to saying K because I don't want to pronounce the letter right. But the Yud and the Hey, the Vav and the Hey equals 26. However, Kabbalah always gets, So Kabbalah says 1 second. How about if you spell out the letters? For example, the letter Yud would be Yud Vav Dalet. Now we have Yud equals Yud Vav Dalet. Right?
Yes.
So now we have Yud equal 20, not 10. Now, Hey, you have a couple of ways of spelling Hey. You can spell Hey as Hey Hey, Hey as Hey Aleph, Hey as Hey Aleph Hey. You can spell the letter Vav as Vav Vav or Vav Aleph Vav. So because there's so many different ways of spelling God's name, when you spell out each letter, you have actually 4 different ways of doing it. Thus you have 4 different numerical values of God's name other than the 26. The first way, which is the experience of the Alephs, Hey Aleph, rather than Hey Hey, if you add it up, it equals 45. The second way, when you deal about the Hey Hey rather than the Hey Aleph, equals 52. The other 2 numbers of 63 and 72, not for tonight. Just let it alone for tonight. Now, when we talk about the name of God equaling different numerical values, what we're really saying is different revelations of divinity in different realms. To understand what this means, we need to understand one more piece of numerology. That's all for tonight. The word Adam, human, Aleph Dalet Mem equals 45. The word Behema, animal, Bet Hey Mem Hey, 52. So now all of a sudden, let's go back to what we were talking about. Animalistic soul, i.e. tohu, i.e. passion, chaos, equals what?
40.
Equals 52. When we talk about Adam, tikkun, orderliness, intellect, godly soul, we're talking about 45. Wow, I was trying to put things into place here. And Kalev, 52, silenced the people to Moses. Process of subduing the tohu to the tikkun, the chaotic emotions to the tranquility of the mind. But let's move on, because we need to get really practical here. We need to know how do I walk out of here and connect with the amazing power of the emotions of tohu to lead me in an orderly fashion to unprecedented success. That's what this class is all about. The lights of tohu in the vessels of tikkun. Don't diminish my emotions, just direct them. Diminished emotions have a limited capacity of success. Chaotic emotions, the ultimate essence of emotions, which is connected to the power of will, when directed and evolved through intellect, now we're talking about true, sustainable, unprecedented success. That's really what this class is really to help us understand. Let's go further. Okay? I want to just, before I wrap up this introduction, I want to tell you a little bit about Moses and Elijah. So number one, you should know that in Kabbalah, Moses, Elijah, all these great, powerful souls, all are called Nuneyam. Nuneyam means giant sea creatures, while average souls are called land creatures. The definition of a sea creature in the world of Kabbalah and Hasidus is that it lives within the consciousness of its source. Simply speaking, these giant souls live in the tangible consciousness of God as everything and everything is God. Thus, they were the ultimate epitome of the definition of 45, ma, prior to any sparks of temptations being there. To them, everything was God. Nothing was a temptation to be led astray. When we talk about the sea creatures, we're talking about a fish in its waters, not a land creature that's above the ground, eating off the fruits of the ground. When we say a sea creature lives within its waters, spiritually that means that these sea creatures are within the tangible consciousness of their source. They see reality as God is everything and everything is God. There is nothing that can present to them a temptation to go astray. Because how can a piece of God tempt you to go away from God? That's all they saw. When you looked at these people, you know, obviously I'm going to talk to you about the Rebbe. The Rebbe saw the radio as the opportunity to have a Tanya Shir on Saturday night on WEVD. That's what it was. And the world said, oh my God, how can the Rebbe use such a forbidden thing as the radio? And the Rebbe responded, look at the last mission on ethics of our fathers. Everything that God created, He created just for His glory. The radio isn't here to give you the latest stock numbers. The radio is here to be able to reach out to people who need to study Torah. That was the paradigm. That is the paradigm of sea creatures. God is everything and everything is God. Everything is but another way to connect to God and to bring God's glory to the universe. Land creatures aren't like that. Now, little problem. Sea creatures is really 45. But we just said that Elijah, who's a sea creature, is 52. Aha. So let's understand this. Because of holiness, the definition of holiness and spirituality is unity and oneness, which is defined by a compilation of all antithetical concepts coexisting peacefully. That's why, for example, when you talk about holy emotions, you don't talk about 7, but you talk about 49. Because every one of those emotions is a compilation of all the emotions. Love and fear is not two similar magnet poles which repel each other, but rather they come together. So therefore, within the holiness of the realm of Ma, there also has to be Ban. Within the holiness of the sea creatures, where God is everything, everything includes 52, there has to be a coexistence where within the world of 45 there exists 52. Now, I want to give you one more historical fact about Moses and Elijah. The Talmud tells us, how is it possible that they hid Moses for 3 months? If the Egyptians used to mark down the minute any Jewish woman conceived, and then 9 months later they came knocking on the door, how did she hide Moses? The Talmud answers, because Moses was born at the very onset of the 7th month. Which means that Moses was the minimal possible gestation in which the body develops in the mother's womb. Kabbalistically, this means that Moses' mission in life was the illumination of his soul, not the refinement of his body. If you look in the book of prophets and its commentaries, it will tell you that Elijah was the longest possible human gestation, which is 12 months. Kabbalistically, this means that Elijah's mission in life was to fully refine and create an absolute transparency in the body so that it can be a total illumination of the soul. Now here, follow this last historical fact, which is part of this. Moses died, his body was buried, his soul went to heaven. Elijah, his body went up the chariot of fire. Because his body, i.e. 52, i.e. the source of Tohu, was so refined that it was able to enter into heaven, capital H. Now we understand why Kalev / Elijah the prophet, who is the total refinement of the body, the Tohu sparks, is the perfect one to bring the chaotic emotions to be in total submission to the soul tikkun light of Moses. Vayas Kalev esa'om el Moshe. And Kalev is the one that was able to subdue, he silenced the people to Moses. Okay, let's go further. Now that we did all of this, we can talk about the last introduction that remains to be explained. By the way, this is one of those classes where I go from the introductions to in closing. Because that's really, once you line up these introductions properly, you already get the whole picture. So let's talk about the last introduction. I told you I was going to share with you the 3 stages of development of the human emotions. Right? So let's talk about it. So, first I want you to understand that before you can have human emotions, you have to have a prerequisite. I already shared with you that long before you can bring into play the rationale form of education, you've got to first have in place the obedience form of education. Every parent, speaking to a toddler or the likes emotionally, had to have used the words, because I said so. That's the rationale. Because if I try to explain to you why this is not good for you, ooh, try that. Try to talk to a tantrum. Try to talk to, I want, because I want, and I want it now. The answer is, because I said so, no. So there has to be the prerequisite before you can bring the chaotic. I want to share with you just a simple metaphor for you to put in your mind. The motions of Tohu is the ultimate experience of a stallion. The power of a stallion is unbelievable. However, before you break the spirit of a stallion, don't try getting onto it. So the prerequisite is that breaking the spirit of the stallion. We're soon going to understand that that's exactly why before Kalev said anything of rationale, he said, Vayas Kalev el Moshe. He had to break the spirit of the rebellious people by simply silencing them. He silenced them to Moshe. Once you have that prerequisite, we can move further. Now, I want to now go into the 3 stages of human emotion development, and then we'll return once again to the prerequisite. Okay? The three stages of the development of human emotions are, according to the names of Kabbalah and Hasidus, A, pregnancy, B, nursing, 3, intellect. Now we're going to go quickly and briefly through these 3 stages, and then we'll go back to the prerequisite. The definition of pregnancy as defined in the Talmud, a Tractate Nida, says as follows: that the infant, the fetus, folded his head between his knees. That's the exact quote of the Talmud and Nida. What does that mean Kabbalistically? So, quickly, we share that what every emotion is actually made up of a compilation of all. Human emotions is always unity and compilation. So I told you 7 times 7 is 49. But let's get to the bigger number. When you say Shema, what does the word Shema mean? Shem, which is the name of refinement. Ayin, 70. Because the full glamour of emotions, human emotions, is 70. Because every emotion has the 3 intellects and the 7 emotions. I want to divide that quickly into 3. I mentioned to you before. The head of the emotion, the 3 intellects. The chest of the emotion, the love, awe, fear, and compassion. And then there's the waist down of the emotion, which we said is Netzach Hod Yisod Malchus, which is endurance, acceptance, and commitment, leading into expression. Okay? Now, when I say to you that the child within the womb of its mother is folded with its head between its knees, what I'm really telling to you is that the head, the intellects of the emotion, the chest, the primary emotion of the emotions, is lying buried, folded, subdued, hidden. And all you're really having is the knees of the emotion, which is the expression of the emotion.
What's in the middle?
No, that's the bottom. The knees is the bottom.
What's hiding?
What's hiding is the head and the chest. The intellects of emotion and the primary emotions of the emotion. Let's be practical about this, okay? There is the why, there is the want, and there is the what. The why is the intellect of the emotions, the want is the primary emotions of the emotions, and the what is the bottom of the emotions. When we talk about the stage of emotions known as pregnancy, the only thing that we're experiencing at this stage is not the why and not the want, but the what. That's the first level of development, the first stage of development of human emotions. Okay? I know what I want. I don't have the depth of want, nor am I empowered with a deep why, but I know what I want. I want to be rich. I know what I want. But I don't really feel the fire in me, nor am I driven by a total understanding of what I can accomplish if I was rich. But I know what I want. I want to be rich. That is the weakest and lowest stage, the first stage of development of an emotion. The second stage of the emotion is nursing. What happens when a baby's nursing? So now the baby, the emotion is here, and the emotion is receiving its nutrition from the parent, the mother. So on this level, we have already the intellect, the parent, feeding the emotion. However, I want to share with you, have you ever come across a friend, or maybe even yourself, have you ever searched out advice, but only from the people who give you the advice that you want to hear? Oh, I'm looking for help, I'm looking for advice. And I'd love to talk to you about it if you tell me what I want to hear. What that means is that the only intellect that this emotion is willing to digest is only that which will fortify it. Just like the milk of a mother is here to help the child's limbs and organs develop. What I don't want you to do is to start questioning why, or maybe even try to change my feelings. So the second stage of the emotion, even though we're talking about nursing from intellect, what we're really talking about here is the want. And the only reason I'm nursing is so that I can grow and develop the fullness of I want. So it's not just the what, it's the fire I want. That's not real intellect. That's me, my emotions, using intellect only for its own purpose. Thus, this stage is not the head, it's the chest. It's not the why, it's not the what, it's the want. Now let's go to the third and greatest stage of a human emotion. the greatest stage of a human emotion is called intellect. Why is it called intellect? Because here the emotion is not looking with a predetermined solution and final decision and just help me strengthen it. Rather, the emotion is saying, I don't care about what I want. All I do want is that whatever my mind is perceiving as reality, I want to make it real. Do you remember how I opened up this lecture? The definition of the most powerful reality of a human being is his emotions. When my mind is studying something without emotions, it's only called in psychology, it's called semantic data. Experiential data is when emotions are infused. I don't mean to get into this right now, but just think about it. The strongest memories you have engraved in your brain were that piece of brain that was brought into you with strong emotions. I remember that because, wow! Thus, when the emotion is able to reach its fullest maturity, it's not about the want and just help me want. Help me feed this want. Help me grow this want. Help me make this want huge. A presidential moment. But what I really wanted to say here is that the true experience of an emotion is when it serves no other purpose than to bring what the mind perceives into the tangible reality of experience, which is emotions. When I study Torah, it's semantic knowledge. But when I allow my emotions to take part and I get excited, God is my God, not some God. And God is kind to me, not in the Bible, He's a kind God. God is awesome, not because Samuel the prophet said so, but because this morning I walked with God. That's when the emotions are absolutely transparent and equal to intellect. And thus the fullest maturity of an emotion, of the human emotion, is actually called intellect. Because it is completely transparent to my intellect, my higher intellect, and it has no other desire than to make everything I study in my higher intellect the reality of experiential knowledge, filled and driven with passion, and thus ingrained deeply into my subconscious. That's done. Now we can go back and start closing it up. All of this is good and fine once the emotion was brought into the human realm. However, before the emotion is brought into the human realm of tikkun, and it's a boiling hot, chaotic experience of the power of will, driven by the fullest explosion of I want, the experience of passion, animalistic soul, tohu, chaos, there is no rationale. There's no processes of development here. I mean, just think. We've all seen on the news great big fires. There's a huge rejoice when they announce that the fire has been brought under control. We see this, right? In California, you have these huge fires. We're not even talking about putting out the fire yet. But just a sigh of relief when you hear that the magnitude of the fire was brought under control. Before you do that, there is no redirecting or anything. There is no stages of development. You're totally swallowed up by chaos. Thus, what is the definition of that prerequisite? Obedience. What does it mean, obedience? And Moses silenced the people, and Caleb silenced the people to Moses. That's the prerequisite. Obedience. Shah, still. Silence. That obedience is the zetz. Now let's talk about this. I want to introduce you quickly to a concept in Hasidus called bitul klali and bitul prati. The definition of the word bitul is cancellation. What's the definition of cancellation? The problem with emotions is only ego. When you remove ego from emotions, then emotions are serving its correct purpose. The power of will, that is totally beautiful. Show me a person without a will and I'll show you a ghost of a human. But when you have the power of will, but there's the great temptation of tohu, ego. Now, what we need to do is the cancellation of the ego of the emotions. The 3 stages of development is a process of cancellation. However, that's called individual cancellation, where we get into the emotion and start working on the individual components of the emotion. However, when you're dealing with a raging forest fire, there is no getting into the emotion to cancel by the components. Thus, we need to first have the bitul haklali, the all-encompassing cancellation of the ego, the smashing of the ego. Then we'll deal with the little developments of the components. What is the process of the all-encompassing cancellation of the ego, of the power of will, is to learn silence, shah. By the way, that's the first thing you want to do when a kid's driving a tantrum. You want to get him to start silencing down. You hug him, you hold him. When you have special needs children, you're actually told to actually put their arms like this and hold them tight. That feeling, all it does is silences. That's all it does. Later you process. So when we talk about this process of cancellation, that's what Kalev did. He started off with the all-encompassing power of cancellation. Shh! You guys are screaming. You heard the 10 spies. You're all frantic. Why did God take us out of Egypt? We're going to die. Shh! Just quiet. Quiet. Listen to Moses. Quiet. 1 second. In closing, who's Moses? What do you mean listen to Moses? Moses didn't talk. Kalev talked. Mystically speaking, we're talking about the inner Moses within each and every one of us. So let's go back here. What is the definition of Moses? We said, ma. We are but what? Total cancellation. I'm a nobody. Don't look at me. Talk to him. It's interesting. I spoke to an actual chassid who it happened to, and he asked the Rebbe, please give me power to fulfill what you're asking of me. And the Rebbe said, power? Power he gives. I just give blessings. That's Moses saying, V'nachnu ma, what are we? We're just conduits. Him. Stay connected to him. Now I want to share with you. The ma of Moses is connected to the ma of the word chachma. What does chachma mean? Wisdom. Break the word chachma. Koach ma. The potential of ma. Within each and every one of us, there's a Moses. Who's that Moses? He is the chachma. Now, I want to quote you directly from the Alter Rebbe what he says, and this is the closing of the class. Chapter 18 of Tanya. Whereas Chachma is above them, the intellects, and their source. Note the etymology composition of the word Chachma, Koach Ma, the potential of what is. That which is not yet comprehended and understood or grasped intellectually. Consequently, there is vested in it the light of the Ein Sof, the Infinite One, blessed be He, who can in no way be comprehended by any thought. Now listen to what Kalev did. Rashi says that when Kalev says, we will conquer them, we will go up. What do you mean we'll go up? You just said we're going to conquer them. Rashi quotes our sages from Sota that says that when he said we will go up, he said, and if Moses commanded us to build ladders to go up to heaven, we'll go up. What are you saying? Kalev, what are you saying? We're going to build ladders to go up to heaven? That's impossible. Biblically speaking, it's impossible. If someone makes an oath, I'm going to build a ladder, I'm going to climb up to heaven with the ladder. You don't have to wait till he tries before you punish him for making such an oath. You can immediately punish him. It's impossible. So what was Kalev saying? You know what Kalev was saying? Kalev was saying, guys, you're using your intellect. You're right. Intellect cannot deal with chaotic emotions. When emotions are expression of the power of will, intellect is going to fall short. What do you have? You do have something. Within you lies a Moses. Within you lies a Ma. Within you lies that which is beyond rationale. And therefore, what's the first thing Kalev said to them? He confused them. He told them something which is rationally impossible. We'll build ladders, we'll go to heaven. What, go to heaven? That's all I wanted to say. I want to close it up with a very interesting thing that I personally... There's a book called Drawing with the Right Side of Your Brain. And it explains to you that the left side of your brain is rationale. Therefore, it doesn't work. Therefore, when a child tries to draw a table, he'll never get a proper three-dimensional table. You know why? Because the child knows that the four legs are the same size. The only way to create the illusion of depth is by making the hind legs shorter than the front legs. But the left side of the brain will not accept that. What are you doing? What are you doing? Measure them. They're the same size. So they said something very interesting in the book. They said two ideas. Number one, whatever you want to draw, turn it upside down. You confuse the left side of the brain. Now the right side of the brain can work. Another thing is, when you draw the chair, don't draw the positive, draw the negative. Draw this, draw this. What you're doing is exactly what Kalev did. Ladders to heaven. What are you talking about? You're right. You can't understand what I'm talking about. Stop trying to understand. Obedience. Faith. Open up to the Ein Sof in you. The Ma. Because the power of Ma can bring the ultimate cancellation. It can break the spirit of the stallion. What do you have once you break the spirit of the stallion? You can then mount it and gallop to unprecedented success. People, thank you.